What if I told you that 30 days could change the rest of your life? Not a year, not a decade, just one focused month where you stop pouring your energy into other people's opinions, entertainment, and noise, and you start investing all of it into becoming the highest version of you. Because the truth is, most people don't need more time, they need more focus. You've been busy looking at who's ahead, comparing your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20, and wondering why your life feels stuck. But the moment you shift all that focus back to your lane, everything begins to move. So for the next month, just 1 month, I'm challenging you to disappear from distractions and reappear as the person God designed you to be. Isolation is not about being lonely, it's about being alone with purpose. It's about separating yourself from the noise long enough to hear your own thoughts clearly again. When you step away from the constant buzz of opinions, social media, and outside influence, you begin to rediscover who you really are beneath all the layers of expectations. The world is loud, and it keeps you distracted from your goals, distracted from your calling, distracted from your peace. But isolation allows you to hit the mute button on everything external so you can finally listen to what's happening within. When you choose isolation, you start to see how much of your energy has been scattered. You begin to recognize that most of what drains you isn't physical work, it's mental noise. You've been giving too much attention to things that add no value to your growth. But when you isolate, you take that scattered energy and pull it back into focus. Suddenly, you have time to think deeply, to plan, to reflect, to understand what's been holding you back and what needs to change. It's in that silence that clarity is born. Isolation gives you the space to detox from everything that's been clouding your mind. Every conversation, every opinion, every fear, every voice that told you you couldn't begins to fade away. You stop seeking validation from the crowd because you start validating yourself. You stop needing external approval because you learn how to affirm your own worth. Growth requires separation because you can't transform in the same environment that's been feeding your comfort. The truth is, isolation exposes you. It shows you the parts of yourself you've been hiding behind business. When you're alone, there's no one left to blame, no one left to distract you, no one to perform for. You're forced to confront your weaknesses, your habits, your fears, your excuses. And while that process may feel uncomfortable, it's necessary. Because until you face yourself, you can't fix yourself. That's where true transformation begins. Not in the crowd, not in the noise, but in the quiet place where you finally decide to take responsibility for your life. Isolation also teaches you strength. When no one checks on you, when no one encourages you, when no one applauds your progress, you learn how to keep moving anyway. That's where resilience is built, because it's easy to stay consistent when people are watching, but it's powerful when you stay consistent even in silence. The gym is empty, but you still show up. The vision feels far away, but you still plan. The results aren't visible yet, but you still grind. That's the kind of discipline isolation produces. In that space of solitude, you start realizing that you don't need as much as you thought. You don't need constant entertainment. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need alignment with who you're becoming. You stop chasing after what's temporary and start building what's eternal, your mindset, your habits, your faith. You begin to understand that the more you strengthen what's within, the less you'll depend on what's around you. Isolation reveals who's really for you. When you step back from the noise, you'll notice how some people fall silent too. Not because they're busy, but because they were only connected to your comfort, not your growth. It's a painful truth, but a necessary one. Separation filters your circle. It allows you to see who's committed to your evolution and who's only attached to your old version. And that realization frees you. You stop begging people to understand your process and start appreciating the peace that comes with being misunderstood. You also start creating in isolation. That's where the best ideas come from, when you're not distracted by what others are doing. You get vision, you get innovation, you get divine inspiration that could never reach you while you were busy scrolling or talking. Greatness doesn't come from imitation, it comes from revelation, and revelation requires stillness. That's why every powerful transformation story begins with a season of separation. Isolation refines your focus. You stop multitasking and start mastering. You begin to prioritize what actually matters. Every hour becomes intentional. Every decision becomes deliberate. You start seeing your time as sacred, your energy as currency, and your purpose as non-negotiable. You stop letting little things steal your attention because you finally realize that focus is the real wealth. You don't just exist anymore, you evolve, and in that evolution, isolation becomes the most valuable investment you could ever make. It's not punishment, it's preparation. The silence sharpens you, the solitude strengthens you. The separation sets you apart. What once felt like emptiness begins to feel like empowerment. You start noticing how the quiet doesn't bother you anymore. It builds you. Because now you understand that before transformation shows up on the outside, it must first be developed on the inside. Discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It doesn't care about how you feel, it cares about what you do. Motivation is emotional, it's the spark that gets you started, but discipline is structural. It's the system that keeps you moving when the fire fades. Most people wait until they feel ready, but discipline teaches you that readiness is a decision, not a feeling. It says, I'll move even when I don't feel like it, because the truth is, emotions are temporary, but commitment is eternal. Discipline doesn't ask for your mood, it demands your movement. When you operate through motivation, your results fluctuate. One day you're inspired, full of energy, ready to conquer the world. The next day you're tired, distracted, and unbothered. But discipline gives you consistency. It builds a rhythm, a daily pattern that carries you through the days when motivation disappears. Discipline is what gets you out of bed at 5 a.m. when your body wants to sleep. It's what keeps you reading when your mind wants to scroll. It's what makes you show up to the gym when no one's watching. Because discipline doesn't rely on emotion, it relies on decision. Discipline reprograms your mind to value long-term rewards over short-term pleasure. Motivation will tell you, you deserve a break. Discipline says, you've got work to do. Motivation seeks comfort. Discipline seeks progress. It trains your mind to think in outcomes, not excuses. Every time you choose discipline, you build mental muscle. You train yourself to push past resistance. You prove to yourself that you can command your body, your time, and your energy, even when your emotions are screaming the opposite. That's where real confidence comes from, knowing you can trust yourself to follow through. The beauty of discipline is that it compounds. The more you practice it, the easier it becomes to stay consistent. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once drained you begins to fuel you. You start seeing the benefits in your focus, your productivity, your results, and even your peace. You stop being controlled by impulse and start operating from intention. Discipline doesn't make your life smaller, it makes your life sharper. It strips away distractions, eliminates waste, and teaches you to give 100% to what truly matters. There's something powerful about doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. Discipline gives you that inner integrity. You stop breaking promises to yourself. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop letting temporary feelings make permanent decisions. Every small act of discipline, waking up on time, sticking to your plan, saying no to distractions, builds a new version of you. A version that's unshakable, dependable, and intentional. That kind of strength doesn't come from hype, it comes from habit. Motivation can be stolen by circumstance, but discipline cannot. When your day goes wrong, discipline still stands. When your emotions collapse, discipline still speaks. It's your anchor when life tries to throw you off course. Because discipline doesn't depend on what's happening around you. It's built on what's happening within you. It's the quiet voice that says, do it anyway. It's the unseen power that separates dreamers from doers. While motivation inspires, discipline transforms. Discipline also teaches patience. It reminds you that results don't show up overnight. You don't plant a seed today and harvest tomorrow. Discipline helps you embrace the process, trusting that consistency compounds over time. It makes you realize that success isn't one big moment. It's 1,000 small, disciplined choices stacked on top of each other. The world celebrates outcomes, but discipline celebrates effort. Because you can't control results, but you can always control your actions. It's in the discipline that your character is shaped. You learn how to say no when temptation whispers. You learn how to persist when fatigue hits. You learn how to stay focused when distractions pull at you from every direction. Discipline builds resilience. It makes your mind stronger than your circumstances. It gives you the authority to tell yourself, I will not stop. That kind of inner control creates external success. Because before you master your craft, you must first master yourself. When you live by discipline, you stop waiting for the perfect time. You stop needing inspiration to act. You stop expecting easy routes. You understand that success belongs to those who show up daily, regardless of conditions. The disciplined person doesn't waste time comparing. They're too busy building. They don't look for comfort. They look for consistency. They don't depend on excitement. They depend on execution. Every decision becomes an investment in who they are becoming. Discipline doesn't feel good in the moment, but it feels right in the long run. It may not give you instant joy, but it gives you lasting peace. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency and the regret of procrastination. Because every time you choose discipline over comfort, you step closer to your potential. You start realizing that the life you want isn't built by what you feel like doing. It's built by what you do day after day, no matter what. Your environment is either feeding your growth or suffocating it. The spaces you live in, the people you spend time with, the conversations you entertain, all of these shape your thinking, your habits, and your results. You can't expect transformation if you're surrounded by the same energy that produced the old version of you. When you upgrade your environment, you're not just changing where you are, you're changing what you allow to influence you. You begin to recognize that your surroundings are not neutral. They are either pushing you forward or pulling you backward. The truth is, success is rarely a solo product of effort. It's often a reflection of atmosphere. When you step into a place where excellence is the standard, mediocrity becomes uncomfortable. But if you stay around people who settle, your ambition begins to shrink to fit the room. You start matching their pace, their expectations, their limits. That's why upgrading your environment is so powerful. It forces you to expand. It challenges you to level up your standards, your language, your mindset. You can't evolve in a space designed for survival when you're trying to step into a life designed for purpose. An upgraded environment starts with awareness. It means looking around and asking, does this space represent the person I want to become? Sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay. That's the signal to change it. Maybe it means cleaning your workspace, organizing your surroundings, or decluttering the chaos that keeps your mind heavy. Maybe it means surrounding yourself with people who think bigger, dream deeper, and speak life instead of doubt. Because your environment is not just physical, it's emotional, mental, and spiritual too. Every sound, every conversation, every energy you absorb becomes part of your mindset. You can't build a strong future in a toxic atmosphere. If you're constantly around negativity, you start echoing it without realizing it. If you're surrounded by small thinkers, you start limiting your own potential just to fit in. But when you upgrade your environment, you break that cycle. You start choosing peace over noise, growth over comfort, and vision over validation. You become more selective about what you listen to, who you share your energy with, and where you spend your time. Because once you realize your environment affects your evolution, you stop treating it casually. There's a certain power in walking into spaces that stretch you. Being around people who inspire you doesn't make you smaller, it makes you sharper. You need rooms that remind you you're still learning, still growing, still becoming. That's where humility and hunger meet. When you're the smartest person in the room, you've already stopped growing. But when you position yourself around greatness, you're forced to rise to the occasion. Upgrading your environment is about placing yourself where your potential feels challenged, not celebrated too early. Even your digital environment matters. The accounts you follow, the videos you watch, the voices you allow into your head daily, all of it programs your perspective. If your feed is filled with distraction, gossip, and comparison, you're unknowingly training your mind to focus on what doesn't serve you. But when you curate your inputs, books, mentors, podcasts, and teachings that elevate you, you start seeing life differently. The more intentional you become about what you consume, the more powerful your mindset becomes. You stop being a product of noise and start being a product of purpose. Sometimes upgrading your environment means walking away. Not because you think you're better than others, but because you've realized you can't grow in the same soil that once kept you comfortable. It's not about arrogance, it's about alignment. There are seasons where you must distance yourself from familiarity to discover your capacity. The people who truly want to see you evolve will understand. Those who don't were never meant to come with you anyway. The higher you climb, the fewer voices you'll need around you, because focus thrives in quiet spaces. Your physical space should reflect your inner standard. If your environment looks chaotic, your mind will follow. When you clean up your surroundings, you clear your thoughts. When you organize your space, you organize your focus. When you build an atmosphere that reflects excellence, you naturally start operating with excellence. That's why successful people are intentional about every detail, the lighting, the smell, the order, because everything around you either drains energy or generates it. A high energy environment fuels a high performance mindset. As you upgrade your environment, you start realizing that everything around you either mirrors your mindset or molds it. When your surroundings are elevated, your self-image rises too. You begin to expect more from yourself, not because someone told you to, but because your environment silently demands it. You start dressing differently, speaking differently, thinking differently, not to impress others, but because you've changed what you accept as normal. You understand that your environment isn't just where you live, it's what you live by. Upgrading your environment is a declaration that you refuse to stay the same. It's you telling the universe, I'm ready for more. It's you positioning yourself where growth is inevitable. Because no matter how big your dreams are, they will shrink to the size of your surroundings if you don't expand them. And once you taste what a high standard environment feels like, you'll never want to go back to the energy that kept you small. An internal audit is the process of looking inward with complete honesty. It's not about judging yourself, it's about understanding yourself. It's about pausing the noise of life long enough to examine what's truly happening inside you, your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns, your motives. Most people live on autopilot, repeating the same actions, making the same choices, and wondering why nothing changes. But when you start auditing yourself, you realize that transformation begins with awareness. You can't fix what you won't face, and you can't elevate what you refuse to evaluate. When you sit with yourself and ask, what's really going on within me? You start uncovering truths that you've been avoiding. You begin to see how certain habits are sabotaging your potential. You recognize how fear disguises itself as logic, how procrastination hides behind excuses, how pride masks insecurity. The internal audit forces you to look beyond the surface and dig into the roots of your behavior. It's not about guilt, it's about growth. Because until you know what's broken, you'll keep patching up the symptoms instead of healing the cause. Doing an internal audit requires courage. It's easier to point fingers than to look in the mirror. It's easier to blame circumstances than to admit where you've been inconsistent. But self-honesty is the foundation of self-mastery. The person who can tell themselves the truth, even when it hurts, is the one who can truly change. That's why the audit is uncomfortable. It exposes you. It reveals your weaknesses, your fears, your limitations, and your patterns of self-sabotage. But the exposure is necessary because you can't transform in darkness. The truth has to be brought into the light before it can be redefined. An internal audit also helps you measure alignment. You start to see whether your actions match your values, whether your goals match your habits, and whether your words match your reality. Many people say they want success, but their routines reflect survival. They talk about purpose, but live in distraction. The audit confronts that contradiction. It holds a mirror to your choices and asks, are you really living the way you claim to? That question alone can shift everything because awareness creates accountability. In the process of auditing yourself, you begin to see which parts of your identity are authentic and which are borrowed. You start realizing how much of what you believe about yourself was shaped by other people, parents, teachers, friends, or society. Maybe you've been carrying definitions that don't even belong to you. The internal audit helps you peel away those layers until you uncover the real you, the version that's been buried under expectations, labels, and fear. Once you see that, you start rebuilding from truth instead of from pressure. You also begin to notice emotional patterns that you've ignored, how certain triggers bring out reactions that don't align with who you want to be, how certain environments drain you while others empower you, how your body responds to stress, silence, or uncertainty. The audit brings emotional intelligence into focus. It trains you to respond instead of react, to observe instead of absorb, to understand instead of escape. It teaches you that self-control isn't about suppression, it's about awareness. The internal audit extends into your daily decisions. You start tracking how you spend your time, where your attention goes, and what gets your energy. You realize that every distraction, every indulgence, every just this once moment has a cost. You can't manage your life if you don't measure it. The audit forces you to ask, is this serving my growth or stunting it? That question becomes a filter for everything. from your habits to your relationships to your mindset, because every choice you make is either an investment or an expense to your purpose. You'll also find that the more you audit yourself, the less you judge others. When you're focused on your own development, you stop wasting energy criticizing anyone else. You start realizing that everyone is fighting battles you can't see, and your responsibility is to fix what's within you, not to control what's outside of you. That perspective brings humility. It shifts your focus from comparison to correction, from complaining to improving. The internal audit transforms your lens. It makes you more compassionate and more disciplined at the same time. Another powerful outcome of an internal audit is clarity. You stop being confused about why you feel stuck because you've examined the reasons. You start identifying the exact thoughts that drain your motivation and the patterns that keep repeating in your life. The audit removes the fog. You start setting goals that actually match your true priorities, not what looks impressive to others. You start saying no to what's beneath your standard, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. Clarity gives you control, and control gives you direction. Over time, auditing yourself becomes a lifestyle, not a one-time exercise. You begin to check in with yourself regularly, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. You start catching problems early before they grow into crisis. You start living with more intention, more structure, and more purpose. You realize that every day is another opportunity to adjust, to refine, to improve. The more honest you become with yourself, the freer you feel, because the goal of the internal audit isn't perfection. It's progress, and progress always begins with awareness. Consistency is the invisible force that shapes who you become. It's not about doing something once with intensity. It's about doing it daily with intention. Every small action, repeated over time, builds a foundation that defines your character, your habits, and your results. The person you are today is the result of what you've been consistently doing for months, maybe even years. You can't separate identity from consistency because what you do repeatedly eventually becomes who you are. When your actions line up with your goals day after day, you start becoming the person you once only imagined. Most people chase motivation, but few master consistency. They get inspired, take action for a few days, and then stop when it gets uncomfortable. But consistency is what separates temporary enthusiasm from lasting transformation. It's not glamorous. It's not always exciting. It's repetitive, sometimes boring, but always powerful. Because every time you show up when it's inconvenient, you're building discipline. Every time you do the work when no one's watching, you're shaping identity. Consistency is proof that you're serious about growth. It's your evidence of commitment. Consistency builds credibility with yourself. When you keep showing up for your goals, you start trusting yourself again. You stop making empty promises and start developing integrity. You prove that your word carries weight, not just with others, but with yourself. That inner trust is powerful because once you believe in your own consistency, you stop relying on external validation to keep going. You move with confidence, knowing that even when life gets difficult, you won't break your rhythm. That's how real confidence is formed. Not by achievements, but by showing up repeatedly. Consistency also creates momentum. The beginning of any journey is slow, uncertain, and full of resistance. But when you stay consistent, you start to build flow. Your mind and body begin to adapt. Tasks that once felt heavy start to feel natural. The more you move, the easier it becomes to keep moving. Momentum is built through repetition. It's the compound interest of effort. And once momentum takes over, progress becomes almost automatic. You stop struggling to start because consistency has turned your actions into instinct. What consistency really does is reprogram your identity. It shifts your self-image from someone trying to someone becoming. The person who writes every day starts to see themselves as a writer. The person who trains daily starts to see themselves as an athlete. The person who studies every morning starts to see themselves as disciplined. You can't fake consistency. It's visible in your results, your posture, your tone, your habits. It becomes part of your identity until quitting feels unnatural and growth feels inevitable. Consistency also protects you from emotional instability. When your actions are tied to discipline, not emotion, you stop being controlled by how you feel. You no longer need motivation to act. You act because it's part of who you are. Whether you're tired, excited, bored, or frustrated, you stay the same. You execute. That stability brings peace. It gives you structure in chaos, clarity in confusion, and focus in distraction. Consistency doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. You stop reacting to circumstances and start responding with purpose. Through consistency, your standards rise. You begin to realize that excellence is not a result of talent. It's the reward of daily effort. You start expecting more from yourself because you've built a pattern of reliability. The person who once struggled to stay focused now operates with precision. The person who once made excuses now looks for solutions. That shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a product of constant repetition. You train your mind to associate success with effort, not luck. You stop waiting for opportunities and start preparing for them every single day. Consistency is also how you earn respect, both from yourself and from others. People trust those who are dependable. They admire those who keep showing up, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. When you live with consistency, people notice the difference in your energy, your discipline, and your results. But more importantly, you notice the difference. You start realizing how much of your potential was always within reach. It just required sustained effort to bring it out. Consistency doesn't mean perfection, it means persistence. You will have days when things don't go as planned, when you slip, when you fail. But consistency isn't about never falling. It's about never staying down. You keep showing up, even if it's imperfectly. Because progress doesn't demand perfection, it demands continuation. Every time you come back after a setback, you strengthen your identity as someone who doesn't quit over time. That resilience becomes part of your DNA. Eventually, consistency becomes your default mode. It's no longer something you force. It's simply who you are. You don't negotiate with your habits. You live by them. You don't hope for results. You expect them because your work ethic guarantees them. The small, quiet choices you make daily define your destiny more than any grand moment ever will. You stop chasing identity and start embodying it because through consistency, you've become the living proof that transformation is not an event. It's a habit.